Hi, and welcome to my channel, Practical Engineering Solutions. Today I have a short video on metal versus plastic wheels. Not to describe which is better, but to identify what you have on your particular cars. Several months ago I started transitioning some of my cars from plastic wheels to metal wheels. And then I started mixing them up inadvertently on the layout. So I had to go back and decide which ones I had changed over, which ones I were not going to change over, and kind of keep the two separate. So I realized that these metal wheels are non-magnetic, so you can't use a magnet. It's very difficult to tell with the realism that there is now on both the plastic and metal wheels to tell them apart. In fact, sometimes I had to use a magnifying glass or a microscope to see which was metal and which was plastic. And it was a real pain. So I came up with a quick solution, which I think you'll find interesting, in order to identify whether they're metal or plastic wheels. Now, you might think you could just use a digital voltmeter or an analog ohm meter to determine whether they're plastic or metal, but that doesn't always work. And part of the problem is that if you have a wheel going over a track, sometimes it's momentary, and the analog or the digital voltmeter are too slow to see a brief flash or a connection. And if you have to do it by hand, it's very tedious to hold a car upside down and put the probes on the wheel and decide, that it's in fact metal. Plus, I think some of the metal wheels have a little bit of a coating on them, so it makes it difficult to do. So I'm going to show you a simple method that I used. Didn't take me long to put together this fixture in order to determine if we have metal wheels. And then if you stay till the end of the video, I'll show you how to identify them and mark them so that you don't have to do this more than once. And once they're on the layout, you can very easily see if the particular car or cars have metal or plastic wheels. Okay, let's get started. Okay, here we are at the bench, and these are some of the materials you'll use to build this project. You first need some track, and this is N-scale track, and each piece of N-scale track has got to be as long as your longest car. You need two pieces of track. You need a piece of pine or other kind of wood. It's about 3 feet long and about 3 inches wide. And then you need two side pieces of plywood. These pieces are 3/4 of an inch thick and about an inch and a half wide. And I'll show you what those are going to be used for. Another thing which is actually optional is a feeder track to supply power to the track. A bumper, which is optional again, but I'm going to use it. An LED right here, any LED. 100 ohm resistor, and 2 AA batteries and a battery holder. Okay. The other thing you might want to use is a railer or a re-railer, like I have here, to make it easier to put the car onto the track without taking time to fiddle around with it. I'm going to use that, but again, that's optional. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to glue two pieces of tracks together with a slight gap between them. And when the car goes over the gap, it'll short the two rails together and the LED light will light. Now, you could use these insulators, track insulators, which Cato and other manufacturers make. But I found out that they don't work that well in this particular application. And the reason is sometimes the wheel goes a little bit high and doesn't bridge the gap. So I'm just going to make these two tracks very close to each other, but not touching. And then what I'm going to do is wire both tracks together, and I'll show you how I did that, or I do that. And when the car goes over the gap, if it's metal, it'll short the two rails together and the LED light will come on. That's the plan. Okay? So let me put this together and then I'll see how it works. Okay, I have it all put together, and let me show you what I did here. I took the two narrow pieces of wood and glued them to this wide piece. I did that so I could do the wiring underneath this wide piece here and you wouldn't see it. I also did not use the feeder track with the wires. I decided it was just as easy for me to wire the track in directly. So I soldered two wires to each one of the tracks that I have here. And I did not use the insulated joiners. I found, as I mentioned before, that they don't work as well. So I just butted the two pieces of track together. The spacing is about the width of a piece of paper, maybe 10 thousandths. And I just kept them that spaced apart. And then I glued these two pieces of track together after I soldered wires to each rail. And then I wired it from underneath. And this is the wiring, what it looks like. And I'll show you a circuit diagram. It's very simple. Then I also decided to use a bumper with an LED in it, just to make it look a little bit neater. So this LED will light when the metal wheels cross this gap. And then I put a Kato re-railer right here, or railer, which will allow me to put the car on there without having to wiggle it. A little more convenient. So let me show you the wiring diagram, and then I'll show you a demonstration of how this works. Okay, here's the wiring diagram. These are the two rails of the first track. These are the two rails of the second track. The two rails are connected together. Then they go through a 100 ohm resistor, then the LED, and through the battery, or to one side of the battery. And then the other side of the battery goes to the two rails of the other track. And here's the gap between them. I wired it this way so that if either wheel shorts out the gap, then the LED will light. Now, you might ask why I did it this way with an LED and a gap. Well, the reason is that if you hook up a DVM to this, it's too slow to see the continuity. Sometimes the continuity is very fast, and a regular DVM, digital voltmeter, or even an analog voltmeter may not catch it. And you can see that, I'll show you that in the demonstration. Sometimes it's just a quick flash, because these wheels, some of them may be coated. Looks like some of them are coated a little bit, and the continuity is just momentary. But I'll show you how that works. So this is the diagram. All this wiring is done underneath the shelf, as I showed you, and two 1.5 volt AA batteries on a battery holder, and 3 volts is enough with a 100 ohm resistor to make this flash. So let me show you a demonstration now. Okay, here's the demo. These two cars are supposed to have metal wheels, and they do, actually. So I put the tank car on here, and hopefully you can see that blue LED flashing. Now, you have to sometimes put some pressure on the wheels to see it, and you have to go very slowly like this. But it does work. In other cases, you may want to twist the car a little bit as you're going over the gap. And the reason for that is you get the flanges to scrape against the rails a little bit better and give you better contact. I got a feeling some of these cars have a little bit of coating on the wheels, and that may be why it's sometimes difficult to do, get these to respond. But you can see by putting this on here, it does show that there's continuity. And with this one here, same thing. This one's a little more problematic, but it does work if you put some pressure on it and you twist it a little bit. So that's how it works. Now the next thing is how do we, you only want to do this once for all the cars you've converted or you've identified. So I wanted a way to identify them without, having to look through a microscope and see if they were metal or not, and then every time I wanted to do that or come back here and do this again. So what I've done is I've mixed up a little bottle of Arm & Hammer laundry detergent, and I use Arm & Hammer, but I'm sure any other liquid laundry soap would work. It's fluorescent under ultraviolet light, and I got this ultraviolet LED flashlight, which I think you'll be able to see, on Amazon or maybe eBay. I think it was Amazon. And it's an ultraviolet flashlight. So what I do is, I'll show you, I put a little drop of the detergent on the top of the car that has been converted, or I have identified as metal wheels. And if you can see that, little dot right there. I think you can see that, how it identifies it pretty well. And in normal light, it's invisible. You can't see it. If it bothers you, or you get your entire fleet switched over to metals, which is what you're doing, you can just wipe it off with some water, because it's water soluble. It's just basically soap, and this way you can identify it pretty well. So that's how I identify them after I go through this, and I found it to be very helpful. If you think this video is good, please subscribe to it, and also like it, and leave any comments or questions you have in the block in the comment section below. Also, you can check individual wheel sets like this by running them over the gap. This is just a metal wheel set. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.